So once we get to the middle part of the Middle Ages, this is actually called the High Middle Ages. So you can't really call it the Middle Ages because that really wouldn't sound right. So this begins around 1000 AD, and this is when things begin to stabilize in Europe. There's actually an increase in population that kind of goes along with technological and agricultural advancements, and this there's a lot of more trade flowing into the region. So there's just a lot more stability in the area. During this time period, this is the rise of feudal farming or feudalism, that idea of basically peasants and serfs being tied to the land, basically getting to live on the land by working for a lord, and knights and that type of thing. So not a great time for the lower classes in Europe at this point. But the growing stabilization leads to new intellectual advancements as well. The idea of scholasticism is coming about at this time, which is a philosophy that emphasizes joining a faith, Christian faith, with the ancient philosophy of the Greeks and Romans, and this was led by the theologian Thomas Aquinas. So also what's happening here in the High Middle Ages is the rise of Gothic architecture. This is highlighted by high arches and sharp-pointed spires and the flying buttress, stained glass. Some beautiful examples include the Notre Dame Cathedral in France and many others. The High Middle Ages were also marked by a series of religious wars called the Crusades, which the end goal was for Roman Catholic Europe to take back the Holy Land from the horrible Arabs and Turks that had taken it over. This was largely unsuccessful and resulted in almost 250 years of war. However, there were some bright spots from the Crusades, mainly when Constantinople fell and those people fled. Really, all that ancient literature and philosophy suddenly flooded in to Europe from those fleeing the fall of Constantinople to the Turks. While the Crusades may have not have been successful in retaking the Holy Land, they were successful in kind of bringing back more of that classical culture into Europe, which will really be one of the factors that starts the Renaissance in the next 100 years. However, before we can get to the glory that is the Renaissance, we first have to get through the pretty miserable late Middle Ages, which was basically a collection of wars and plagues and famines that resulted in the loss of about half of the population of Europe. And you thought you were having a bad day. Probably the biggest of all the bad things in this period was the plague itself, or the Black Death, as it was called, which is really thought to be the deadliest disease of all time. Even though the influenza of 1918 and 19 killed more people than this, there was a greater proportion of the existing population that was killed from the Black Death. Now, the plague itself, as awful as it is, was a major game changer for Western civilization. Europe was extremely overpopulated before the plague, and I'm not saying that it was good that the population was reduced, but this reduction of almost 30 to 50% of the population really ended up resulting in higher wages because there was less people to work, so they paid the people that were left more money, and all of a sudden more land was available and more food was available. So actually the status of the peasants greatly rose after the plague. If you were lucky enough to survive the plague, you were left with all this open land and all these jobs and all this food, because like half the population was gone. It was really quite a strange phenomenon. Historians contend that the Black Death had a leveling effect that lowered economic inequality while improving the lot of workers and peasants. So out of the horrible 14th century, we arrived at one of the most cultural significant events in Western civilization, which is the Renaissance. So the Renaissance was a major cultural shift for Western civilization, in which an old worldview was suddenly shattered and replaced by a consciously new worldview. So while we're all pretty familiar with the Renaissance, or maybe have some familiarity with what it is, we know that it generally started in Italy, but it would eventually branch out into northern parts of Europe as well. Now, the Renaissance and its works are considered by many as the height of art in Western civilization. Some of the most beautiful works of art that have ever been created come out of Western civilization. Come out of the Renaissance. But it wasn't just about the beautiful works of art. That is kind of what the visual we have of the Renaissance. But the Renaissance would be the start of a huge resurgence in philosophy that would pave the way for both the Reformation and the Enlightenment. The big change during the Renaissance was how we viewed ourselves, how man viewed ourselves. It led to the rise of what we call humanism, which wasn't necessarily a new idea. It was an idea that the Greeks and the Romans had kind of prescribed to, but this was the first time in medieval Christendom that man suddenly saw himself as the center of the universe, that man could accomplish great things with the help of God, but it wasn't just God that can do great things. So this will be this is a stark change in the worldview of the Middle Ages. Italy actually holds the key to understanding the importance of the Renaissance. Italy played a major role in the onset of the Renaissance because it had Europe's greatest concentration of urban centers held over from the heyday of the Roman Empire. Italy was particularly bad hit by the plague, and has been speculated that the resulting familiarity with death caused thinkers to dwell more on their lives on earth rather than the spirituality in the afterlife. In particular, Florence is seen as the birthplace of the Renaissance. So the Renaissance, which really means rebirth, sort of a rebirth of culture, ushers in this wave of art and literature and philosophy, and it will really be the key to understanding the next major events in Western civilization that we'll talk about, which is the Reformation and the Enlightenment. And if we're always trying to look and see how history connects to us, I think of all the eras of history so far, the Renaissance really still connects with us today, just in the lasting legacy it leaves. I mean, you can still see art from the Renaissance, and just what it did for art and philosophy in general. The Renaissance is easily one of my favorite periods of history to study. So that will do it for this video. The next video will talk about the Reformation and the Enlightenment, and again, how it all connects together, because that's my main idea, is just trying to see that you can connect everything together, not just picking out people and dates and all those nitpicky things, but hopefully that you can get the big picture here and just have a better understanding of how everything connects together. So thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.